All right, welcome. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Studio One and making sure you protect your work, making sure that it's saving. Just Studio One has your back, but if you don't handle the fundamentals, then you can miss out on some of the goodness that's happening with Studio One. So we're going to talk about save. We're going to talk about autosave. We're going to talk about versions and just some things you can do to make your life better because stuff happens. If you do this enough, you'll have things go wrong. Somebody in the group today, we were talking about, hey, if you accidentally removed a track and you can do it with a keyboard shortcut and then whoops, hey, my whole track is gone. Of course, undo in that case is a big win. But just to give you an example, let's say that you didn't notice that you had removed a track either with a shortcut or you picked the wrong menu. That could happen. I'm in a hurry. I picked something wrong and all of a sudden that's gone. And then I save the file. Well, oh man, my stuff is probably gone. Well, no, it's not. And we'll talk about that today, that even if you forgot and didn't notice the track was gone and didn't quickly go, oh, undo. Undo's my friend. It's probably the biggest key I use over and over and over and over. It's crazy how much I end up doing an undo for all sorts of things because I do things wrong. I try things. I make mistakes just like everybody else. And even with all that, Studio One has your back. So undo's your friend. And then at the end, I'll give you a little bonus. I'm going to write down a little bonus here to make sure that there's another little thing that most people don't know about, but you are going to know about. It's a state of the end because of the bonus. I just wrote it down because I just thought of a great way, something that you could do that would be really helpful and give you some additional tools that I didn't even have planned for today. So save, autosave, revert, some cool stuff. So what happens here? Well, now, one, hey, throw a comment over in on YouTube. It's helpful if you're watching this on YouTube Live. You can put comments in there. You can also, we're live on Facebook at the same time. You can throw comments in there. I'm monitoring both, but I'll monitor both those mostly at the end. And I'm going to, let's see, there's something I learned last time that, there's that. And then I have one other thing I can do here. Pop out. Yeah, pop that out. Now I get the comments there. Okay, so I just learned something. So hey, Deborah, see, you were there. But I didn't know you were there. But now I have something new that I learned last time I did this. I just, like everything else, I keep learning. You keep learning. We're all learning. That's just the way it goes. And then Harry, good to see you there. All right. So I've got that one. There's one more. There we go. And then so if you're also on YouTube, it's always helpful to throw a comment there. You can hear me. You can see me. That's all working. All right. So save. Undo is your biggest friend. I do it all the time. I can't believe how many times I undo things. So when you have it happen to you, don't stress about it. Just undo. Get very good. You should know that keyboard shortcut. Control Z, Command Z. It's also one of the few keyboard shortcuts that I don't recommend you remap to something else, although you can. And the reason I don't recommend that is because when we use RX, when we use Studio One, when we use Google Mail, when we use almost 100 apps, Control Z, Command Z has been established for a couple decades as the undo command. And since it works every place, I recommend you don't remap it in Studio One because then when you go to every other app, you don't have that in your back pocket. And it works so many times for so many things, even Facebook messages or YouTube stuff. Undo is a universal thing that's happening in almost every situation. You want to have that in your back pocket. So I don't recommend you remap it. But here's a little dirty secret. If I go in here, Studio One, and I create something new, I have my brand new one, and I'm going to create my new file, and then we go ahead and we do this. What I have, unfortunately, is I have some people that don't save. What they do is they happen to know, oh, Studio One does autosave, so I don't have to save. No. You can do that. And you are right. If your machine crashes right now, so I just created something. I'm going to record something fantastic. There's my best voiceover of the day. And so I just recorded that. And if I wanted, I could sit here and I could not do anything. And the autosave will kick in after 5 minutes by default. Could be more, could be less if you changed it, but that's the default. I could depend on that, but I don't recommend you do that because here's why. Note, I name this new file. And we go over here to the start page. It's not showing up yet. What we do want to do is one time after we've recorded something, I normally would do it with a keyboard shortcut, but I'll do it from the menu, File. And if you don't remember this keyboard shortcut, it's also universal. Control S, Command S is save in Studio One, Word, Excel. I learned it back in probably Excel. It works in Notepad. It works in, boy, that's another one of those universal commands. Save, cut, copy, paste are the same across all the apps. Like I wouldn't remap, cut, copy, paste, even though you could, because those are universal commands. And Control S, Command S, I tend to do it with a keyboard shortcut. I've lost so much work over the years where I've made a mistake, or in the old days, a laptop would die, computers would die, something would go wrong. I would make a mistake. And so you learn to save all the time because something can go wrong and your machine can crash, or for 100 reasons, maybe not even related to the app you're using, something else can go wrong and crash things. But once you save the first time, this is the cool thing that happens. So Studio One has this interesting behavior. If I mess around with this, I did name it, and I messed around with it, and when I go to close, I end up saying, no, do not save changes. Studio One says, wow, Don just did all this work, and he doesn't even want to save it, so I'm going to just take it off disk. It's the one time Studio One will remove things from your drive. It's one behavior that if I recorded for 4 hours and I never saved it and I only did autosaves, and I choose no, then what it does is it wipes out everything. It basically says you must have been messing around with something if you don't even want to save it when you're done. So what I do is the first time I get something, I'll record the first segment or two. And I got frustrated with my wife because she always saves, but she would save way later in the process than I like. Like I think everybody should save in the first minute they use the program. And I would say that for every program. It has nothing to do with Studio One. If someone were in Audacity, I'd be saving. If you're in every other program, I would say the same thing. Save early, save often. It's a great habit to be in. It'll save you someday. And so but watch this. We look at the start page. It's not there. We go back. And now it's the second we save it, I would do it from the keyboard shortcut, but I'll do it if you have my macro toolbar for version 2, it's got a little save button. I was frustrated about my wife not saving often enough. I put it there. Hey, Lisa, you have no excuse not to save. It's a simple little button there. So now she can do that. Keyboard shortcut, either one. You can use the menu, file, save, yay. And then watch this. Now I go back to the start page. And once you have put it in there, once you have saved it, it will now show up on your start page. So that's a cool thing too, because now that gives us an additional thing. In the background here, you can see my autosave is already there. I have an autosave because I did not do that save within the first 5 minutes. So it gave me an autosave. So I have both now. That's a good thing. You want that. And here I know where I put it on disk. I could go and find it easily. And so this is a really great thing that once you've saved it, it shows up here. It's also name the folder. You've got a bunch of, just trust me on this. You will pay, one day you'll send me a chocolate bar because you'll say, that saved me a bunch of time because I can go find the stuff. Now, if the machine totally crashes, as opposed to me closing it and telling it no, then I can get all the autosaves in the background, even if I never saved it. All right. But I don't recommend you do that. Just trust me. You will someday send me a chocolate bar because it will save you time, even though you can go back and recover it. And since it takes more time and effort, just save one time and it's all in the background and it has the other things. If I show this file here, it has all the other folders related to it. It's brilliant. It's easy. It's simple, and it just saves you some hassle. Okay, but let's say we have some other things to go and that can help you as well. In addition to save, every time it's doing an autosave, it's creating a version in the background. Okay, so now you can look at this restore version. And there is that file that we saw from the start page. And it will organize them for you. And by the way, mine's probably a little wider. I don't know if it's how wide it is. You can make this wider. You can make the columns wider. And this means that if you wanted to go back, so we were talking today, so someone said, hey, I can accidentally lose a track using a keyboard shortcut. And if someone had done that and then they saved it, then all they would have to do is go File, Restore Version, and they would see all the versions. Now, if I were smart while doing the demo, I'd go into my options and go into locations, and instead of autosaving every 5 minutes, you don't need to do this, but I'm going to do that. And then now it'll just do autosaves faster. Okay, now, by the way, I don't know if how quickly it'll do that, because, yeah, it'll, now, the autosave's hyper smart. One of the things people don't realize is that it's smart enough to go, hey, if he doesn't make a change, I'm not even starting the time. Now I'm going to make a change. I just made that shorter. Yeah, I cut off a little bit of audio. It's triggered internally. It's a little notepad that says, okay, hey, a minute from now, I need to do an autosave, and it'll do it. And then that means in the background, we'll see a new version that's available to us. And beyond that, it is also going ahead, and in the background, all your audio is in little clips. So if I record another bit of audio here, I'm going to record something fantastic. There's my best voiceover of the day. And here's my second best voiceover today, which is awful, but it is there, and it's a good example, and I stop. Well, each of these little segments are its own little wave file in the background. What does that mean? Hey, even if my drive had a problem, if my external drive got unplugged, the second you stopped that, it wrote that down, and these are independent in the background. And so what's my liability if something was corrupted on my drive? That doesn't happen that often anymore. Hardware's gotten, matter of fact, it's almost a problem. Hardware's gotten so good that people don't realize that things can go wrong. And that's a problem, sort of. It's a good problem to have on one hand, until I'm the one that has a drive that fails. And I get that call all the time. I've worked with thousands of people, and I will get a call, I don't know, 3-4 times a year out of my 1,000 clients that a drive has gone down and they have to replace something. And somebody will probably put a note in here. You know, they learn the hard way, unfortunately. That's how I learned. Drives failed a lot more in the old days when I started this. My first Mac computer was 1992. My first PC was 1989. I have those bookmarked for some reason. I started a new business at that time, so I kind of know exactly when it happened. And I bought my first PC, and then I bought my first Mac, and I've had both on my desk. So, hey, and drives fail. Okay, and in the old days, they failed a lot more often, so you learn to be very defensive if you still wanted your work to be there when you're done. So as soon as you start and you record something, save. Just do it. And then, of course, if I look in the background here now, because I've been yip-yapping away, I recorded something, I have my autosave down here, then what's going to happen is when I right-click here, I have an autosave here. If I show an Explorer in the background, it actually has created another autosave. It's created the first one, and then it is going to be creating more if I'm making changes. It's so smart that it will go ahead, and if I don't make any changes, it's not going to create new autosaves. And they end up in a history folder where they're all organized here. There's the first one that I could go and just open natively if I went, but I don't need to do this. I don't need to go behind the scenes. This is all behind the scenes stuff that you don't need to know, but it is there, it is happening, and it is being taken care of for you. So if you don't pay any attention, that's cool. It'll do the right things for you anyway. And if you get stuck, you can go back to your versions. All right. So that's pretty cool that that's happening. You can get to them all from here. There's one in a minute. There will be a second one there. I will do enough just to see that happen. We'll talk about a couple other options that are really, really cool. Now, I'll show you one that I used. Well, let's make sure that you know. Here's the interesting thing. It is doing autosaves every so often, meaning, in my case, I just reset it to 1 minute. I normally leave it at 5 minutes. I'll set it back. You do not need it every minute. That's kind of ridiculous, because you will not use an autosave more than once every couple years on average. And most people, so there are people that can go 5 years and never use it. So I leave it at the default of 5 minutes. That's enough. The worst case scenario, I'll lose 5 minutes worth of stuff. But you can also, if you get to a certain point and you want I want to save this one right now, you can create a version, and I'm going to call this is now. So I would give it something, and I would say something that made some type of sense. This is now. It is the before I did the super change, whatever that is. I would end up giving it a label there, and then when I do that, it's going to take a snapshot right now, and instead of it doing the autosave, I created one. And of course, let me go back to the start page. I go right here, and you will see it there. If I right-click on the name, there's this is now before super change, and it gives me a date and time stamp. This is the first autosave that it did. There will be more. It starts its timer once I change something. So people every once in a while go, "Why? It's not every 5 minutes. I set it to 5 minutes. It's not," and it's like, well, I didn't make any change. So it's smart enough to say, I do not need to do something if somebody doesn't end up making a change. All right. It is smart enough to know, and it resets the timer after every save or every autosave, and it also needs a change to occur to the file. But look at this one here. This one has autosaves that go back to May 9th, 2022, because I was working on it and I hadn't saved within 5 minutes. And so what did it do? It said, Don didn't save recently. I'm going to do this one here. If you start paying attention to the time, this one's a couple days later. It's because most of the time I was saving within some reasonable time frame, and if I save, then it doesn't keep an autosave. If I get busy doing something else, then it won't necessarily do anything. But it's one of those things. It's going back and forth, and paying attention. All right, Don saved manually. Cool. I don't need to worry about it. Don didn't save manually. I need to worry about it and do it. So yeah, both things occurring there. So make sure you save, and then if you don't, it has your back. Okay, and I now have a version that I later could go to this snapshot right here and get to it at any time. And now as I keep on doing other things, and I change the volume and I change the colors and all the other stuff that I could do here, if I ever need to go back, I can now just go back. And if I try to go back, now by the way, I just made a change. So watch what happens when Studio One, when I tell it to go back to that version before I made super change. I'm going to say, hey, restore version here, and I'm going to go back. Oh, now it's got a couple of them. I want to go back to that one, and then it's going to ask me a question. Hey, do you want to save? Remember, I had just made a change. I turned that red. I changed it, so I'm going to say yes. So now I get to save what I have right here, the changes I just made, and go back to the version that I had previously where I saved, before my super fantastic change. So that's always there. It's really smart. It's really clever, and it gives you additional options to save something without having to save and have 40 different files. You can have snapshots, and as you move back and forth between them, it keeps the stuff in the one you're currently working with. It's very, very smart the way it's been implemented. And it really comes down to this. Musicians are creative types, and they're not always the most organized individuals in the world. I'll just say it because I'm one of them. So they're creative sometimes, and when you're in the middle of being creative, sometimes you're not worried about the little details like saving files and all that stuff. Now, we should do that. I know you're creative too. Yes, we are creative, but just be in the habit of saving. Don't let that be your excuse. Oh, Don's a creative type. I'm so creative that I'm going to just ignore life. It'd be like saying, hey, I'm so creative. I'm such a good driver. I'm not going to wear seatbelts, and I'm going to disconnect all the airbags in my car. Not too smart, because even if I am all those things, I can make a mistake, and a lot of other people can make a mistake, and the next thing I know, hey, it would have been nice to have the seatbelts and the airbags working. So save often, use the revisions, but it will go ahead and allow me to go ahead and restore those. And now you see I have 4, which includes that one, and you can go through and you can open all these and look at them safely and move between them without losing anything, and you have all those versions you're working on. Makes life good. All right. So, and then I'll show you one. There's 2 bonuses here. So I've got 2 bonuses for those of you that have stuck with me to the end. Now, first, I do need to go ahead and check the comments here and see if there's anything I can. So be sure to also go to YouTube and throw a comment in there too. But let's see. I learned the hard way. I save every time I walk away from the computer. Yeah, oh boy, is that a big deal? Because what happens sometimes, I walk away. I'm going to go get something to drink, or I'm going to go do something, and then there's something that goes wrong outside of Studio One. The computer crashes for whatever reason. Electrical runs out of battery. I've had 100 people that the issue they had was they didn't notice that they were running low on battery. They got a phone call. Their kid came to the door. Their pet, the mailman, who knows? They walk away from their computer. They come back. The darn thing had died, or even worse, they had their computer set up and it did an automatic update, but it closes down everything. There's 20 reasons. So every time you walk away, save. And then if you ever want to play with something, so here's one of the 2 bonuses, okay? Bonus number 1. Studio One has this interesting feature that mine's grayed out here called revert. And revert is go back to the last save point, which means if I wanted to test something out here, I could go ahead and record something, or I'm not going to record it. I'm just going to change its color because that's just as good. But it could have been anything I want to do. I'm going to try something. Hey, let me try this. Let me put on an effect. I might go ahead and put an effect on there, make an echoey thing, try Halloween stuff. I could try 20 things, but then when I want to go, okay, I'm going to throw away all that because I was just messing around. Now I can go back and say revert, and it goes back to the last change point. And that's really handy for those of us who are trying to figure out what we want to do. And this is all throwaway stuff anyways. I'm just practicing. If those of you are doing the jump start, then you could be practicing something and say, I'm going to throw all this away. It's just a practice session. I don't want to keep any of it past a certain point. I save right now. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me see if this works. That's really the way you learn about everything, from smartphones to Studio One to everything else. You learn something, you practice it. You practice it 20 times. But sometimes I don't want to keep all my garbage practices. And I know it's garbage. I'm just freelancing and just working on something, and I'm not keeping it. So what do? You set a save point. Be sure that you save. Mine's grayed out because I just did that. And then revert is grayed out because I just done that. And then as soon as I go through and I could do anything, and I'm just changing the color so that it's obvious that we changed something, but I could have recorded more. I could have thrown an effect on there. I could have done anything you can do in Studio One. I could have done that. And now revert is available and it'll take me back to that last save point. All right. So that's pretty handy. And I use it all the time now. I just kind of bookmark. Okay, save right now. And then now I'll practice something, try something, do something different. Know that I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to try something. I'm going to practice it. I do it all the time with effects. It's how I've learned. So if I'm in the mix console and I'm trying these effects out, I may go ahead and add an effect and say, all right, well, let me add this chorus. And I put it on here and I test it out and I do all this. I go, well, and I may add 2 or 3 or 4 effects, putting them together to try to get some other effect some other sound that I hadn't done before. I'll try and go, okay, well, that's all garbage. But now that I know what I want to do, I'm just going to do the easy bake oven method. I'm going to go right here and I'll revert. And then I don't have to think about it. And I'm back to that point. And now I'll do what I really want to do. Okay, so that's number 1. Now, commercial here. Be sure to check out VO Jumpstart version 2. Man, that thing's just smoking there. Tomorrow we're doing the first audition secrets. I predict we'll do this again. But so if this is, I think you're going to be very impressed with Maria. If you haven't checked that out, it's on the VO Jumpstart site. And of course, the Mastering Conversational Reads. And we have a deal that if you end up doing the audition one, you can get a deal on Mastering Conversational Reads. Check that out. All right, end of commercial. And then for those of you that stuck to the end, I told you another bonus that I don't talk about enough, but something else that Studio One has, and that's the history window. If you go, remember we talked about undo. All right, undo is super cool. Here, let me do something. I will change this, throw that in there. I'm going to change the volume, and now I end up with, I've done some things. And wow, so I wasn't paying attention, but if I under edit, history, right there. This window here tracks everything I have done since the last open, save. And what you can see is there I colorize things. I can take them out and I can put them back. And the reason it doesn't go back any further is because I reverted. And when you reverted it, it's just like it opened. It'll keep track of 20 things, and you can even keep this open while you're working. And you can go back and forth. I'm going to put those back. There's the volume curve. I'm going to take these things and I will duplicate them a few times. And I duplicated 3 times. And you can watch this history build as we're doing different things. It's going to, it's tracking what I did. Everything you do that it can undo is going to be show in this history. And you can use your mouse and go back one at a time. It's very handy. Put that there. This history, sometimes I want to see, well, what's it doing? If I applied effect, if I change things, it's really amazing. Let's change this thing here. I set that to stereo. That's back to mono. History can be your friend, especially if you have to undo or figure out what in the heck did Don do. All right, and I've done things occasionally, don't remember what I did, or I had something else going on, and I ended up pulling up the history there and found out, oh, yeah. I had someone call me one day, and their track was missing, and I didn't know exactly when it had happened, but I just removed that track, and if we go over here to history, guess what's going to show up as the first thing? Now, they could have simply done an undo, but they were new and they didn't know. So I pulled up history. It could have been back 3 or 4 that they had accidentally deleted a track, and it would have shown up right here as long as you don't close the file. Once you close the file, the history and the undo buffer get totally reset to 0. So if I go ahead and do the things here that have to do with the restore version, revert, all those things are going to restart the history. If I don't restart and I just keep going here, then I could end up with a file that has 150, 200 commands in the, I don't know what the max is. I think it's virtually unlimited, but it'll run out of memory someday. If you get to the end of it, I'll be blown away. I don't think anybody, maybe you could. I won't say you can't. I've never done it, but you could get hundreds of commands in there and you can see what you've done and go back to them and it helps. And you don't need that 98% of the time, but when you do need it, it's great to have it there because you can figure out what you did, the order that you did it, and go back. And you can't selectively go and just take something out, but you can work your way back up and forward. And remember, if you combine that with creating versions, then what you could do is you could go back to a certain point, create a version, and then you have the ability to go back and forth and see what you did and even keep track. And I mean, you can get crazy with that. It's a really, really handy thing to have going when you combine this history and the undo with the ability to do versions and save your own versions at different points, and Studio One's got your back. Okay? And none of that even, there's still more because of the way it works to store all your audio safely in the background. Every one of the things that I record when I start and stop, it has its own little WAV file in there. Huge bonus. And it's one of the big deals that give you safety and give you some features that people just don't really appreciate because it just kind of works. And if it works, who cares? I don't need to know that. Only if they're working in one of these other DAWs. It's why some of the DAWs that put punch and roll in later, they can't do it for real. They have to kind of do this workaround because their file format wasn't set up in a way that facilitates this. And it's more complicated in the front end when they built it, but it gives them all sorts of ability later to do some really smart handling of our audio. So, all right, let me check. I need to check comments here, see if anybody's throwing a comment in. I got carried away. Your drive was full. Oh, yeah. When your drives get full, all sorts of stuff. Yes, stuff happens. Okay. So here's the one thing, so Benjamin put that in there. Just do not assume that it will always work any more than you put your seatbelt on in the car. Most of us, you have airbags, but you put the seatbelt on because even if you do everything right, something else can go wrong. So you don't need me. We've all experienced that in life. We've done the right things and something still went wrong. That's called life. But if you're doing something that's a big project and you're working on it and you're working hard on it, who wants to redo it if we don't have to? And a few simple habits. Remember, Control S, get it under your fingers. Undo, Control Z, Command S. Get those under your fingers. Use the menus. If you have my macro toolbars, you have the Jumpstart. You've got Save and Close sitting right here. You have a Save button. You don't even have to do anything. And if you hover over it, it even gives you the keyboard shortcut. If you're on the PC, Control S. If you're on the Mac, Command S. So you have it there if you hover over it to remember the keyboard shortcut and do it. All right? All right. So I got some more stuff coming up here. Be sure to let me know in the comments. If you want to see a show, be sure to let me know here. It's extremely helpful if you go over to YouTube and watch it there too and throw comments in there, especially after it's done. YouTube pays attention to how many people are watching it. And if they're watching it, that gets it out to more people. That's super helpful when you do that. So even if you're watching these live, you can even switch over and watch it live there on the next one. It helps me a lot, and I appreciate your time. You have a fantastic night, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye.